Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why it is so hard for countries to agree on big issues, even when everyone knows it is important? Today we're diving into some fascinating psychology research that sheds light on why cooperation, especially when sharing information, can be such a puzzle, and how we can actually get better at it. This study tackles a really big real-world problem. How do 30 different countries work together on something as complex as migration and asylum? Think about it, you have different laws, different priorities, and different levels of resources. It's a recipe for potential conflict and breakdown. The core question here is, how can we improve cooperation, information sharing, and decide together when so many different groups are involved? Researchers noticed that a major European organization, the European Asylum Support Office, or EASO, and its 30-member countries were struggling. They weren't communicating effectively and decisions weren't being made smoothly. So they brought in Professor Karin Moser, an expert in how people and organizations work together, especially when it comes to sharing important stuff like information. This isn't just about one country. It is about a whole continent trying to figure out how to get on the same page. What is really cool about Professor Moser's approach is that she doesn't just stick to one field. She brings together ideas from psychology, how people think and behave, and computer science, how we use technology to communicate. She looks at things like how organizations are structured, how our social groups influence us, even how small incentives can change our mind. It's a whole toolkit for understanding why cooperation is tough and what makes it easier. Professor Moser's past research has shown us some really important clues. For example, she's looked at how things like getting feedback, being recognized for your expertise, or even just what your friends or colleagues are doing can make a big difference in whether you are willing to share your knowledge. Imagine you have a really useful piece of information. Are you going to share it freely, or are you going to hold on to it? It turns out how you are treated and what others are doing plays a huge role. She also studied how working together for a short time versus a long time changes how people interact. Short-term projects tend to make people focus on just getting the task done, while longer collaborations make them think more about the relationships and building trust. And get this, she even found that certain strategies work better depending on who you are dealing with. For people who are more competitive, giving them recognition for their expertise can actually make them more willing to share in a way that benefits the group. It's like they see it as a win for them to be recognized as a valuable contributor. This is a key insight for anyone trying to build effective teams or multinational collaborations. Another big finding is about our identities. We all belong to different groups, right? Maybe you are a doctor or a teacher or from a certain country. These group memberships influence how we see ourselves and how we interact with others. Professor Moser's research shows that these group identities, especially professional ones, can sometimes make it harder to cooperate with people outside our group. This can be even more pronounced online, where misunderstandings can happen really easily, leading to conflict. So, back to the EASO strategic network. These countries were really stuck. They were having the same arguments over and over again about who should do what, how much they should contribute, and what expertise even meant. It was frustrating for everyone involved. They knew they needed to improve, but they just couldn't figure out how. This is where Professor Moser's expertise came in. They appointed her as a senior expert advisor to help them untangle this mess. For about 3 years, Professor Moser dug deep. She talked to all the top officials from each country, the people who held all the important information about migration and asylum. She looked at their documents and their digital systems. She attended meetings, observing everything firsthand. It was a real deep dive into how these 30 countries actually operated. One of the first big breakthroughs came when Professor Moser helped them see what everyone actually valued about EASO. She identified 3 main areas, or what she called common goods. Some countries saw EASO mainly as a place that provided services. Others saw it as an agency that helped create common policies and guidelines across all countries. And many saw it as a community where experts could share knowledge. There wasn't perfect agreement on which of these was most important, and that was a big part of the problem. By clearly laying out these different perspectives, Professor Moser gave them a way to talk about their disagreements without it turning into a fight. They could see that even though they had different priorities, there was still common ground. This framework became a way to understand the conflicts and move past them. Instead of getting stuck on what they disagreed about, they could focus on what they universally valued. like the community of experts, and the impact was significant. Countries started reporting a much better atmosphere in their meetings. People were more willing to listen to each other and find compromises. They finally understood that their different policies and resources were the logical reasons behind their different approaches, not some personal failing. This helped them move away from blaming each other and focus on building solutions together. Professor Moser also highlighted the importance of recognition, something we touched on earlier from her general research. Countries that were contributing a lot, especially those with more resources, wanted their efforts to be acknowledged. It wasn't just about doing the work, it was about being seen and appreciated. This recognition helped them justify their contributions internally and motivated them to keep participating. ESO started making sure to publicly thank and identify the specific contributions of different countries and their experts. Communication got a major upgrade too. Professor Moser suggested ways to structure meetings so that more people could speak and more actual decisions could be made. They started reserving more time for strategic discussions, which made representatives feel much more satisfied with how meetings were run. This also led to more equal participation. Smaller countries, who might have felt they didn't have as much of a voice before, now felt heard and better able to express their needs. This was a critical point. The research gave these smaller nations a much louder voice. It pushed ESO to modernize its communication and interaction styles. Big meetings, the way they used to be, often meant the same few people dominated the conversation. Moser's analysis and feedback has motivated ESO to move away from emails and to introduce interactive